Good morning, and welcome to Unitarian Universalist Society of Schenectady. I am Stephanie Maslenka. My preferred pronouns are she, they. I am your worship associate today. Our worship leader for this service is Melissa McKinnon, and together we welcome you into this circle. We welcome you into this space. We welcome each other into this breath. I'm off script for a moment here. I want to share something amazing with you. At least it was amazing for me. Yesterday, I was fortunate enough to be offered a seat on a bus from Albany, New York to Washington, D.C. to protest. Well, how many of you protested somewhere yesterday? Stand up or give yourselves a round of applause. I am here to tell you, if you were there, if you read it, if you've looked at it, you know the energy is happening, the tide. I heard this so many times yesterday from Senator Raskin, Senator Green, the leaders from Indivisible. The tide is changing, and we are that tide. Thank you all for being there and for being here. And if that doesn't bring joy through interdependence, I don't know what will.
So I wanted to share a meditation with you this morning, and it comes from some very old teachings from India that constitute what we call Ayurveda and yoga. They offer ways for understanding and seeing ourselves as connected to everything around us, as well as practices for joy. So if you will, just finding a comfortable seat. If it's comfortable to you, gently close your eyes or gaze downward and feel the length of your spine. And just travel down through your spine, all the way down to your seat, your sense of connection, the earth beneath you that holds you. And travel up your spine, feel a sense of up through the crown of your head into space, to the universe. Sense your connection there, perhaps. So in Ayurveda, there are 5 great elements that make up all life, including ours on Earth. Everything that's organic, non-organic, all matter, is made of space, wind, fire, water, earth. And in this understanding of the world, consciousness exists before matter, and all matter has consciousness. We are made of space, the container that holds all, the field of existence. And if you would just notice the space that's around you. Your skin itself is porous, there's space. Your lungs have space, it's how your breath can travel in, out. Even our bones contain space. And sound travels through space, so noticing too sound around you. Maybe you hear yourself breathing. We're made of wind or air, the only element that moves. It's vibration, it's motion, connection. Just noticing air as sensation on your skin. Air as wind that travels as breath through our body. The wind, the winds of spring, kite flying weather. We're made of fire. Fire is energy, heat. The fire we experience outside, like wildfires, the fire that digests our food, and the fire that digests our experiences. Our eyes are said in Ayurveda to be governed by the element of fire. Every cell in our body has an element of fire that allows for transformation. We're made of water. Water, the rivers and oceans, the fluids in our bodies. Long ago, we emerged from water onto land. Our bodies are mostly made of water. Noticing maybe a sense of water even in your mouth. Through our tongues, we require water to be able to taste. Maybe you taste the lingering taste from breakfast, or the bitterness of coffee, or the sweetness of cream. And we're made of earth. Earth is solidity, mass, the substances formed and reformed, feeling the solidity of your body, the seat beneath you, the earth, the ground below. And bring attention to your breath, perhaps breathing in a little more deeply, breathing into your whole body. We can source joy in our very breath. On our breath travels prana, the energy of life. That energy, teachings say, began in a roar of joy that set the worlds spinning. The roar of joy is the sound we often share if you ever take yoga classes. It's the sound Om. Om, the roar of joy that set the worlds spinning. And we'll have some moments now for our own internal prayers and thoughts and meditations. I wanted to, just by way of introduction, tell you that I've been a member of this congregation for over 25 years. I've lived in this part of the world on ancestral lands of the Mohawk and Mohican peoples for most of my life. I spent 4 years in Florida for college, 9 years in Tucson, Arizona, the ancestral homelands, and still the homelands of the Tohono O'odham people in Tucson. And I was in graduate school where I studied United States and Latin American history. Much to my parents' dismay, I left graduate school before writing my PhD and instead became a yoga teacher in 1994, which was decidedly not cool at the time. I was, in fact, following my heart. So today I'm an Ayurvedic health counselor, I'm a yoga teacher, I'm an herbalist. And in the midst of this work, I served this congregation as director of religious education for 7 years until 2014, until the trees called me away to do some different work. Central to my work and thinking is an abiding concern for the multiple climate crises I have watched unfurl over my lifetime. I think to deal with them, we need to deal with our stories about who we actually are as human beings on planet Earth, and we need a different sense of time, especially now. I think that if we keep moving at the increasing speed of this human culture with 24/7 news and access to more human drama and pain than our hearts can hold, we will burn out. And we will miss the joy that is here even now. And it is here for me that centering a notion of what actually is interdependence as a Unitarian Universalist is crucial. I want to share today from a new book that came out by a young person named Sophie Strand. Sophie Strand lives in the Hudson Valley. She's a writer. And this is her third book. She's also a young person who lives with an incurable and terminal illness. She says this, she says, we need to wake up to the fact that we live in an intimate relationship with a world that is suffering, The threshold we have to cross is one of extreme discomfort. And most medical and healing paradigms tell us that discomfort should be avoided or medicated. Through force-fed techno-optimism and a constant stream of media distraction, we are encouraged to avoid sitting with silence, with uncertainty, and with the howls of pain from the beings that live outside our doors. But being numb doesn't just mean we avoid discomfort. It means we are equally denied the full spectrum of physical pleasure and intelligence. There is a world of wild love and bodily creativity just past the doorway of prickles and pins. There is sex without sin, delicious, incorrect embodiment, queerness, interspecies collaboration. There is a community of more than human beings with advice on how to navigate climate change and social collapse. So I've spent the last 10 years with people and plants and soil and insects and birds and four-leggeds growing community urban farms in the city of Schenectady. And I chose to work in community on urban lands, creating urban farms to be part of offering spaces for human community building around food that could cross race and class, and to participate in ways to come into better relationship with land, with soil, with plants, and with other beings. So at the same time as I was getting started with this, Adrienne Maree Brown's book, Emergent Strategy, Shaping Change, Changing Worlds, came out. And I really took heart and took to my task to see how her ideas could work in building community farms. So Adrienne Maree Brown defines emergent strategy as a strategy for building complex patterns and systems of change through relatively small interactions. It is practicing adaptive and relational ways of being to intentionally change in ways that grow our capacity to embody the just and liberated worlds we long for. For me, I think the key was that we all need to be willing to change. And central to her work is an idea of interdependence and decentralization. And here, interdependence is about human connections, that we need each other. And this in itself is powerful. And what it comes down to, how I understand it is, right, I don't have to have the answer. And I don't have the answer alone, but I need to show up and I need to know how to be in good relationship with people. And this is where those uncomfortable edges around privilege and entitlement can arise. And I learned how ingrained it is in me and my white liberal upbringing, and how hard it is to let go of expectations about how things should be, to let go of believing that I had the answer, and my work was to convince people of that. All those things that have been shared here in this congregation around what we've been calling white supremacy culture. So showing up and working with the lens of emergent strategy really was transformative for me. I learned things and changed in ways I could not have if I had not shown up. It is humbling. It is not an intellectual exercise. My first language, English, is one of 70 languages that's spoken in the city of Schenectady. And every day I worked, I could see my class privilege, and it's uncomfortable. My ideas were challenged. I will say frankly, I let go of a belief in a meritocracy that would save us and usher in only the best ideas led by a field of carefully vetted experts. And the extent to which we are a class-based society has really come into sharp focus for me. I also heard a lot of fear narratives that tell white women of middle and upper class to stay in their more gated, safer communities. And of course, poor white women have never had that as an option, nor have many people. I got to know and met an immigrant man from Guyana who legally changed his name to Ronald Reagan. Some of the most creative vegetable growers I've met are immigrants with incredible gardens in their yard, and I saw this a lot, especially in one of the spaces that we work in Schenectady in the Hamilton Hill area where we also had offices at the time. You know, I met funny, loving, hardworking people who annoyed me. I'm not going to pretend I'm not a bodhisattva. I'm trying to accept. One person, probably the most knowledgeable growers I met, had addiction issues, and he spent much of the year unhoused. But we had relationships with people who came through the farms. And yes, we kept information on local shelters and food banks. We kept packaged food that could be eaten and not require a stovetop or a lot of processing. We were partnered with a food pantry, and there was joy in the work and a real love and excitement with this cross-pollination of ideas and plants and all the different ways you can eat a vegetable depending on your culture and where you come from and how you grew up. And has been pointed out in scientific research, being outside, working in the soil, gardening, that can help with depression that blocks our sense of joy, and it can really be as simple as that. But though in many ways this human-centric world and the notion of human exceptionalism, which is the way that I was raised, began to make less sense to me. And then I received an unexpected gift that I fully realized with the most recent national elections and the turmoil and challenges that we find ourselves in now. I found that grounding myself in the seasons, learning the names of the plants and fungi and animals around me, caring for the soil and growing food, herbal medicines, and flowers, anchored me to a larger narrative, a slower, longer story, and it grounds me still in these troubling times. I was surrounded by what I'm now going to call, and this is not a new phrase, I know, a council of beings. Sophie Strand has a way she talks about it, and this is what she says about a council of beings. The potent thing about creating a council of beings you live alongside is that, unlike an abstract human god, they actually show up. The heron does, in fact, dissect the sky, providing a symbol of incisiveness at just the moment when we need to make a decision. The ground really does provide a soil womb for the food that we eat and metabolize into music, laughter, dance, heated breath on a window pane, lovemaking. The fungi really do hold the forest together and provide a medicine that heals our brains and rewires our immune systems. These are the guardian angels that have roots instead of wings. They are attached to place, and the more you summon them, the more they will show you that there is a miracle in every footstep, a deep, abiding embrace in every biome-laced breath of fresh air. A source of joy. And I think that maybe after 10 years of working on this, I have started to understand in my own being what my teacher and mentor, who is, her name is Rowan White, she's a Mohawk seed keeper, and she teaches about Haudenosaunee culture and relationships with the more than human world. She introduced me to the writing of an Australian Aboriginal writer, an academic, Tyson Yunkaporta, who has a book called Sand Talk, How Indigenous Thinking Can Save the World. So in this, I didn't take on another Native identity or Native spiritual practices, and in fact, it was Rowan White who told me that everyone has Indigenous ancestors, and I needed to find and learn about mine. So from the best that I know, my ancestors are Celtic Norse, and both sides of my family go back to Scotland. That way of life I learned about was deeply communal, connecting people to each other and the land with sovereignty goddesses. They knew the ability of a community to survive depended on a relationship to the land. I think this is still true, and I think we may have become disassociated from this with our global food systems. that communal Scottish identity became a threat to growing ideas of private property, industrialization, and capitalism, enough so that some of my ancestors were probably immigrants to Canada and this country because of what is called the Highland Clearances. And the Highland Clearances happened in the 18th and 19th century, and this was the forced evictions and burning of homes and villages in the Scottish Highlands to displace people from their land. This effectively ended these strong communal systems that even the early Roman Empire could not break. So learning my own ancestry was this important connection for a sense of self that is larger than a limited time here and the stories that I've been given by my culture about who I was and who I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to be doing at any moment. And I can see myself as part of a longer story. And I want to be a good ancestor too now. Learning what I could about my ancestors' ways of knowing and being that seemed more closely allied with the land, I came to appreciate trees, and especially oak trees. And I can understand now through a lens that is both ancestral and scientific that trees are my ancestors. They are kin, and maybe that's what the trees were calling me towards originally when I first heard for the first time. And so what I came to was a study of Druidry, and Druidry is, in fact, a broken religion. It's the religion of the Celtic peoples, and in Scotland, many of the Druids became Catholics as they saw a wave they could not stop coming, and they needed to change to survive. So this form of Christianity became known as Celtic Christianity, and it maintained some of the older understandings. Very little really is known about the Druids. Mostly what we know is from the Romans who were trying to eradicate them. But they left hints, and that has been enough. But this understanding of storylines that are old and go back has given me a sense of real connection to the land, a sense of belonging, even to the land where I live now, and this council of beings that surrounds me. And it makes me feel less like I'm in some special times and more like I am in a cycle. And perhaps there are answers to be found in looking back at our ancestry and ancestral traditions, not to keep everything either, but rather to source resistance and to source joy. And so I embraced animism. And I will admit, I say that with a lot of hesitation here. But I have been buoyed by the recent work of Sophie Strand and a lot of other writers. This does not exist in a vacuum. She defines animism as a relational world view, a belief system that views all beings, be they rock or water or animal or plant, as animate and alive. Many philosophies and belief systems are able to hold a concept of seeing sentience everywhere. And I have come to see our belief that we are it and we are separate from the body of the earth as a great disconnection that renders us lonely and isolated. Only human actions matter. Humans are the only actors. We're in control of this narrative. It's our story. To the extent which it isn't going our way, we are lost and angry and scared and lack joy. And how, Sophie Strand asks, could one of the youngest species on the planet possibly think it was solely capable of geoengineering a complex tapestry of ecosystems woven and rewoven over the course of millions of years? You know, we came in the middle of a story. And the miracle isn't that everything is the same in an animate world, but that everything is being differently. And this she calls the animate everything. The animism that saved me again and again was not one of enchantment and preciousness. It was an animism of chaotic difference, of woven contamination. It was an understanding that just because I was alive, that did not mean I should assume that the aliveness of the hill or the river or the wild roses was the same flavor as my own. Knowing that a stone was alive kept me alive. But most importantly, knowing a stone was alive differently than me kept me asking questions, humble and curious and available to surprise. And I opened my arms to the animate everything. And what are our bodies really? Are they discrete individuals, separate, different? From a scientific lens, we're surrounded by relationship stories that challenge our notions of a discrete identity of anything. How we understand through the lens of science how the plants around us came to be, I think, is a great example. The plants move from water to land, but they don't look like the plants of today. They don't have root systems. They're like tumbleweeds. They're like chlorophyll. And there's already fungi on land that are interwoven in the soil, and the fungi then attach to the plants, and the plants then, and I think she writes it in a really lovely way I'll share here, because I think it really brings us into some interesting ways of thinking about our story. That over a period of tens of millions of years, fungi acted as surrogate root systems for the plants that have slowly developed into the forests and food-bearing crops with which our metabolisms are so interwoven. While plants now develop their own rhizomatic networks, they're still only available to access water and nutrients within a tight radius. Fungal mycorrhizal systems that enter into plant roots extend those networks, connecting older trees with kin and uniting diverse arrays of vegetal, fungal, and microbial communities. They seem to embody what poet David White calls the conversational nature of reality, queering our idea of where to draw the species line, the sex line, the boundary line of an individual. When a tree constituted by mutualistic fungi that is involved with 5 other plant species mates with another tree constituted by a similar entanglement of dependencies, how many beings are included in the reproductive act? How many beings are having a conversation? The connection between plants and fungi is so strong that endophytic fungi are vertically transferred to the newer generation through seeds. When the fungi live in the very seeds that will become a tree, their role becomes something between midwife, parent, lover, and friend, helping the tree tap into the rich nutrients of the soil and community of other beings that constitute an ecosystem. Put more simply, fungi introduced plants to the underworld. And it was only in the underworld that plants learned how to make community. Community that bridges differences in species, in age, in biosemiotic language. Fungi taught plants that survival isn't about individuation. It's about becoming radically involved. So involved that you let your friends into your very genetics, into your root systems. And so what of humans, right? We might think of ourselves actually as co-housing units. The world passes through us, right? In a human being, human genes are outnumbered 1 to 100 by the genes of bacteria, fungi, and viruses. There's specific flora in our guts that we need for digestion. There's different flora that live on our skin. There's even different flora in our mouths. Like maybe we are just the place of a big party for bacteria and fungi and viruses. And I think that this world is more interconnected and queer and wilder than any story I ever learned. And continuing to be curious about and learn about beings other than ourselves is an antidote to depression and fear. And it requires a willingness to pay attention to the more than human world around us, to slow down and listen as an act of resistance and life-saving affirmation. I don't want a hero to save me, and I don't want to be a hero. I want to be part of an underground mycorrhizal systems, connecting across species in vast underground networks. Like Adrienne Marie Brown says, a part of building complex patterns and systems of change through relatively small interactions, bottom up. I want wild love. And I hope for you a council of beings that you can call on that surround and support you in these times.